Keep me honest here.
Just for the one item that we didn't want to forget about was that there was a motion posed at the end of the day yesterday, and staff have kind of gone and done some wording. So I just would like to read out the wording now, and if it's acceptable to Councillor Wells, it was a motion to write a letter, and we just want to make sure that it's consistent.
This would be a good time. Thank you.
That staff be directed to prepare and send a letter on behalf of the Board of Health respecting the challenges faced by Haldeman Norfolk Board of Health in regards to provide the full scope of mandated services within the provincial allocation of funding. The municipal contribution has increased annually as both the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and the Ministry of Community MCYS have not fully funded the provincial programs at the cost shared 75/25% and 100% levels over the past several years, and that the letter also outlined that in the absence of any additional provincial funding to fully fund the programs through the annual service plan and budget submissions for 2018, the board will be in a position to consider reductions to services to the level of funding received, and that copies of the letter be sent to Haldeman County Council, the Honourable Charles Sousa, Minister of Finance, the Honourable Dr. Eric Hoskins, Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, and the Honourable Michael Coteau, Minister of Youth and Community Services.
It sounds wonderful.
You're good.
Thank you very much, but I must truthfully say I did not say all of that, but I certainly support all of that.
You need a seconder and a mover. You have Sonnenberg as a seconder to Councillor Wells. Any discussion on that? It was so long, I assumed that Councillor Wells drafted that. Hearing no discussion, those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. James and Kathy, if I may, I have two motions to deal with. One is to approve the budget, but I need an amount. Do you have an amount where we settled at yesterday to put in this motion to approve? If you could look that up while you're doing that. Marlene, Susan, anything you want to add, comment before I get to the motion and the confirming bylaw for the Board of Health? I need the dollar figure.
Mr. Mayor, would you like the number for the Board of Health? Or
I would, please, if you got it. I'm just waiting for, can I get a mover, just Councillor Wells, that we approve this amount? Member Black has seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. And just wait for that amount and we'll get to these two motions. Clerk says it's the initial amount of the budget as presented minus $51,200. And James is saying no.
no, it would be minus. That's what we're figuring out. It might be the 86,000 because it has to be both a Haldeman and a Norfolk share for the board.
The combined requirement dollars. It says net levy Haldeman Norfolk combined requirement.
So, Mr. Mayor, we have the number for the bylaw. That's $2,616,800 is the net levy requirement.
Sorry, I heard $2,216,800.
$2,616,800.
Thank you. $2,616,800. My apologies. Thank you. It's been moved by by Board Member Wells, seconded by Member Black, that the Board of Health approves the 2018 Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit operating budget with a net levy Haldeman Norfolk combined requirement of $2,616,800. Any discussion? Mr. Brunton?
Well, I can't remember where we left off in this, but I went back and I wanted to remind council what's happened here from 2017 to 18, what we're proposing. And overall, counting this, it's about a 30% increase in those budgets over those 2 years for our share. Not far off it. And I just don't understand how we can sit and tell all our other departments to come in at 1 or 2%, or we whittle it down, yet that budget comes in at, well, like I said, around 20%. That's hard to swallow. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Further debate, further discussion? Now I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Those carried. Thank you. Confirming bylaw, mover. Councillor Wells. Councillor Sonnenberg. Wells and Sonnenberg have moved that bylaw 2018 BH02 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Board of Health for the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit at this 2018 Board of Health budget meeting be passed, signed by the Mayor and Clerk, fixed with the corporate seal. Any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you, ladies. We'll put that budget aside. Now, I want to reconvene our Norfolk County budget session. And certainly, I'm going to the agenda we started with yesterday morning. Before we wrap up, we'll open it for a council opportunity and staff for any unresolved items, things they want to bring up. I will ask one question to start while you're thinking of what we've done here. James, to you, I know this is budget session, but last year we put the $500,000 commitment to NGH project. We had the income, we had the money from the legacy fund investment, and that was just simply transferred from one section of that portfolio, I'll call it, into the reserve. As of the end of August in 2017, we did not make enough for the $500,000. I'm just wondering, because the first year, 2 years ago, we had the money from the budget, so I didn't want to perhaps not have a feel just briefly where we're going to consider that and pass up the chance that the budget's approved. Do you wish to suggest anything? I know that there will be some discussion in February about our investment. Do you wish to comment, make any suggestions, any ideas? I have some, but I'd like to hear yours first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the $500,000 that we've committed per year, I believe it's $5 million to pay within 10 years. And the payment is actually a one-time payment at the time we accrue that $5 million. So if we accrue the $5 million in 8 years, then that's when we would make the payment, so on and so forth. With so having said that, we have time to, yes, we had a bad return last year, but we have time to make up for it. And with the report that I'm going to be bringing back to council, with the plan to have a guaranteed or a sustainable payment rather, of 2.5 million to council every year from the legacy fund. 2 million of that goes to the roads reserve, and the 500,000 goes to put aside for the payment to the hospital. So we have, I guess in other words, we have time to make up for that lost year. The other item as well is we have a small, we do have that we did make about 250,000 that year, and we also had a small amount in the retention reserve, so that could also make up for it as well. So if you're suggesting we perhaps add an amount to the levy today, I wouldn't think that would be necessary.
I haven't suggested anything. I just didn't want to say a month from now, oh, wait a minute, we should have put something in the budget or whatever. Are you comfortable that we can have this discussion in February when your report comes forward, that we don't have to deal with that right now, because that's just fine with me, and we'll see what council says here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is definitely something that I was planning on including in that report.
Okay, are you fellows, members, okay with that? We'll be getting a report in February, and we'll deal with, because we haven't really committed anything for 2018. We have in 16 and 17, but not this year. Councillor Brunton?
A couple of things. One, James made a comment there, and I think about the 5 million to the hospital. My recollection, and I do recall making the motion, that we made the payment when the first progress payment for construction went ahead, that we weren't to give the money until that time period. Am I correct on that? It's not a case of when we accumulate the money to give it to them. I think if you check the, and I do recall Mr. Robichaud showing us that letter.
James?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brunton. I would appreciate if that is written down anywhere to get a copy of that, because prior to this meeting, we tried to look for any sort of documentation on when we would have to make this payment, and it's my understanding through the previous treasurer that it was a payment once we accumulate it. So,
there's a motion passed by this council to go when the first progress payment of construction, and I remember seeing the letter written by Mr. Robichaud at the time.
Andy?
Through you, my recollection of the motion of council is that when they are ready to begin building, they have to come and do a deputation before council. So it'll be the next term of council. They'll have to come do a deputation. So although that money's being earmarked and being set aside, the next term of council could very well come in and say, no, we aren't going to do that, because they do have that process in place in the resolution. So it's one of those things where you can't commit the next term of council, but we are saving towards the commitment made.
Okay, well that motion should be in the minutes someplace, I would think.
Well, I would suggest, Councillor Brunton, that our staff go and get that motion, because you're quite right. There was a resolution passed that clearly stated they would have to come and request it, and they would also have to not get it until their construction is ready to go. Yeah, so I just suggest go get a copy of the resolution and see what it says.
And on another note, Your Worship,
yes.
I personally am not happy with the fact, based on last year's results, and I'm going to say it here today, that we made 280, I think you quoted that, on our investment from the Legacy Fund, and we paid our investors 400,000.
That's correct.
1 year. And I don't like the fact, and that was August to August, that we sit here for 6 months waiting for a report. I think we should have been dealing with that the next week to get that money into the right investment so we can have a little more money to deal with anyways. Thank you.
And we will be getting a report in February next month, and we will have that discussion then. I don't think we need to get into that today. I'm looking at our possibility of wrapping this up by 4 o'clock. If not, we have tomorrow morning booked as well if needed. Okay, so that was the only question that I had. Any other concerns to bring before on this relates to this budget? Councillor Columbus.
Mayor, what are we doing with respect to 5354 out of country travel?
Well, Ooh, so far, we're not doing anything unless you want to discuss it.
Is that in the budget somewhere?
James, I think it's fair to say that, if I may, that 5.1 and 5.2 is information, and that we have some training or conferences listed here, and also what Councillor Oliver has brought up on some capital projects that are levy funded. Do you wish to comment? Councillor Columbus is saying, are we doing anything with these things? And I guess that'll be up to us, but James?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Columbus. You are correct. The first couple pages are for information only, and we've already talked about those graphs. As far as 5.3 and 5.4, with the training, the out-of-province training, last year's budget deliberations, there was a motion passed where any out-of-province training would need approval by council. Subsequent to that, there was a report brought to council with a list of out-of-province training, which was approved, and I believe there was a couple small adjustments. And so what we wanted to do this year is to have that resolution in as part of the overall resolution of the budget, and we attached the information for the out-of-province training in tab 5 to look at and to ask any questions if there is any.
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Ed.
Yeah, with respect to 5.3, it appears as though the same individual's taking 2 out-of-province travels. We've got hundreds of employees in Norfolk, and I always thought that if one of those was permitted and not 2, I think that's the way we should go. Permitting one of them rather than 2 for the same individual.
Councillor Wells?
As you know, I'm getting old and I can't remember. So I thought we had suggested that we were not going to approve out-of-province conferences unless they came before council and got permission. Did I,
It's here right in front of you right now.
Well, I know that, and so, but I listened to James, he kind of, if I understood him correctly, I thought he was saying that we've already pre-approved these. So just for clarification.
Okay, yep. That's a good question. Mr. Johnson, are these pre-approved, or are they here before us now to be approved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, they are before you now to be approved. Just to clarify as well, I don't think I answered the question earlier. The dollar amounts that you see there are within the budget. So if you decide to adjust this in any way, then we would adjust it on your screen in front of you.
And Mr. Johnson, Councillor Wells asked an excellent question, because somewhere, my memory's not as good as it used to be, but somewhere I do know that at council, was it in the capital budget? I specifically remember the water environmental, the last one listed in New Orleans being discussed. I think it was at capital, but somewhere when I was sitting down there, so maybe it was at staff or at a committee of council. Lee?
Through the mayor to council, that one was just, as you recall, we do the rate-supported budget at a different time than the levy-supported budget. So it fell underneath the rate-supported budget. So it was a council meeting where it was included in part of that. So this group that you see in front of you are the ones that would be approved as part of the levy budget, whereas that one has already been previously approved as part of the rate-supported budget.
So the last one on page 5-4, yeah, because I was going to say it was capital, I was up here, but I was down there. You were in the chair, I believe, for wastewater. So that last one has been approved through that budget. So, Mr. Johnson, just to be clear, page 5-3 and the one at the top of 5-4, those 3 are before us. They have not been approved through a different budget or this budget, correct?
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
thank you. I'm clear. Any discussion further on this? Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that the fire chief actually be permitted to only attend one of these conferences out of country, rather than both.
You want to say which one? I know they're $500 difference, or eliminate one of them. Oh, Mr. Cridlin, sorry. My apologies here.
Maybe Mr. Cridlin can shed light on which one's the better one to cut.
Through the mayor, yes. I've just got a text from the fire chief. Even though it says fire chief, it's not Terry Dix, the fire chief, going to both. And if I just have a minute to read what he's got to me in the last minute, I'll shed some light on it. Through the mayor, if I'm reading this correctly, if one of these trips, even those two individual, has to be canceled, it would be the top trip, I believe, to Indianapolis would be the one that we could withdraw.
They make that motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Geisens has seconded that the top request for a conference on 5-3 for $3,500 be deleted. Just to that motion, any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? That's carried, thank you. So that one is deleted, and you'll be taking another $3,500 out of the levy, correct? Mr. Johnson, we'll be reducing the budget by 35. If you want to, well, I'm going to wait on this figure. That is carried, so thank you for that. I'll be right with you, Councillor Wells. My apologies. Just looking for some, there it is. I'll be right with you. Councillor Wells, thank you for your patience.
Put a motion on the table that we do not approve either of the two that are remaining.
Either the fire chief one, or sorry, the fire safety one on 5-3 at the bottom and the top of 5-4. Those two? Motion to remove those two, the fire safety and also the EDAC conference. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sonnenberg, discussion on that motion. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know as we've had this little discussion around the table, we've been using both the phrase out of country and out of province. My recollection was that council wanted to be made aware of and have the right to approve out of country requests for travel. And I would point out the one at the top of 5.4 is not out of country, it's in the province of New Brunswick. So I just need some guidance on this. I understand where my colleague's coming from, including them both, but I thought it was just out of country travel that we were interested in as a council. Can somebody help me on that?
Mr. Johnson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Oliver, I believe our policy for our internal Norfolk policy for conferences and whatnot states that out of country would need to have council approval. I've seen that before. I can't confirm if it's here in Norfolk as well. But for more to your question, the resolution that was passed last year at around this time did specifically say out of province. Yes.
No, I certainly will say that the motion is in order. We were told that these have to be approved by council. So one has been through the wastewater and water, but the other three have to be approved here in the budget session. Any other discussion on the motion to remove these two? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Further, Councillor Brunton. Well, let's do one at a time, if that's okay with you. You want page 4? Sorry, couldn't hear you, Councillor Brown. 4? 4-5?
Yes.
4-5, thank you.
And it's the overall budget.
Yes.
And I'm going to take another kick at this one. And I want you to go across under materials and supplies and services for 2018. And it totals $34,425,000 for round figures. That's an area of the budget that all through these discussions, I could get very little, if any, information, and that's a substantial chunk of our overall budget, 34.5 million, we'll say. So, I had a motion prepared, and I don't know if council wants to support it, but I would like to, and let me read it. I've kind of got it here roughed out, okay? Let's get this turned around. That staff remove $400,000 from the materials and supplies and services portion of this budget and report back to council. And that's about 1% of the 34.5 million. Because I have no idea. I don't think it should be that onerous. So that's my motion, Your
Motion to reduce 400,000 overall.
from that section
And,
of the budget.
it'd be- If that is to happen, we'll go to staff to find out where they
Yes.
would do it and report back. I would need a seconder to entertain discussion. Councillor Wells has seconded. Open for discussion. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I wonder if I could ask the councillor when he means for staff to come back, like you don't mean tomorrow, you mean at some point in the future with all the cuts that they made to get us down to the 400K?
Yeah, that'd be fair. Yeah, that's what I like to see what it is and bring it, you know, like there's 34.5 million in there. I don't know what it is, but I like it to come out of that section of the budget. I think it shouldn't be that hard. It's about 1%.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Just to clarify, that 400,000, if you take it out of that line item, then it actually goes below 2017 budget levels, because included in that amount are the new budget initiatives and the council approved initiatives. So that 442,100 increase includes part of those as well. So just so council's aware that if we were to do that $400,000 decrease, then we would be below last year's levels with the budget.
Well, there's 34.5 million in there, if I may. And each one of those, if I read that right, they're up 4.1% and 3.5%. All I'm saying is I don't know what's in the total 34.5 million. And I don't think 1% would be that difficult. I don't really care where it ends up, but or comes out, but I would like to see that reduce that amount.
Your motion, if I may, was to reduce it from both materials and supplies and service line.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Further discussion. Councillor Wells?
Well, Councilor Duncan is correct, is he not? This is a $35 million item that we are looking at,
That's right.
so that everybody understands that.
I would add those together, say you're correct, it's $34,445,200. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those opposed? That is carried. Supplies. Further discussion? Yet another item? Go ahead. I'm sorry? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Give us a
I'm sorry.
page number.
Okay, it's in the new budget initiatives, and I went right to page 3 and 4, and I guess it does take in 5, but some of
Okay.
these, okay? So there's quite a few of them there, and some of them are really redundant because they show no financing or staff. So I thought maybe we could go down that list and see if we agree. I personally have some, and if you want to take them one at a time, or...
Whatever way you want to go here.
Okay, and maybe some of these we've touched on, Mayor Luke, but I'll go down, I agree with the Integrity Commissioner, I guess that has to go. The Property Management Coordinator, I think that's,
Page 3.
I'm on page 3?
Yes.
Okay, I think that one is a .25 increase in a person, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't show any real cost to it, so I can support that one. I don't know what the rest of the council want to stop me if you wish.
What I'd like you to do, if there's anything here you want us to consider to remove, because we've been through this, and
Okay.
days have been left, but you certainly are in order to revisit anything, so you could tell
Okay.
us the ones you support, but I think if you go to the ones you don't support, then we know what you do support.
Okay, I guess the accounting clerk student for financial services. I think we're going to hire 150 students. I don't know if that fits the bill for that one, so I don't support that one, Your Worship.
So if you've got...
I'll make a motion to remove it.
Okay, thank you. I will deal with them one at a time. I'll need a seconder to entertain any discussion on this, to remove the third item down, the .35 accounting clerk student. Is there a seconder? I don't have one, Councillor Brunton. Keep going.
Okay. This customer service representative for Dunville. Budget impact $23,000, levy impact $18,200, .84. I'd like to make a motion to remove that one.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is Board of Health. I think it is, yes.
So through the mayor to council, that is actually coming through the QPAP. It is partially funded by the Board of Health funding by 25% and partially funded by the OW on a 50-50% cost share that we had spoken to earlier.
Councillor Brunton, I'm going to have to rule that one out of order since we're in council and we've already passed the Board of Health budget.
All right.
Maybe I'm partly at fault for that. That's one, I guess, we should have brought to the surface about a half an hour ago. I apologize for that. If you continue, please. I think the next one is certainly Board of Health, the
Vial for Life.
Vial of Life, Marlene.
So through the chair to Councillor Brunton, that is actually not a Board of Health.
Oh,
it's an
okay.
overall Haldeman Norfolk initiative.
Okay.
And it's within the Health and Social Services simply because we do cross borders with Haldeman.
Right.
It's actually a program that's been in place since 2015 by a collective group of community partners that have come together to implement the Vial of Health. We have had some in-kind donations from several community partners. However, we're grappling every year with trying to purchase the vials and the printing and the labels that's associated with this particular program. So although we've been able to implement it for the last 3 years, we need one more year of full implementation and then going down to maintenance. All of the services and work is actually in kind within Norfolk County and Haldeman staff and other community partners. All the packaging is put together by volunteers. The packaging, or through staff on return to work type of programs. So there's no cost from a labor perspective. It's simply for the materials for that program. So the $4,000 will get us through across both counties for 2018, and then with ongoing costs of about $1,500. We're just really struggling with finding the financial component to buy the materials piece. It is a worthwhile program. It does save lives. We have many positive anecdotal stories from EMS and fire when they're on site that information is easily accessible for them to save seconds in assisting those people in need on arrival in the event of an emergency.
Councilor Brunton, continue.
Okay. I didn't quite grasp all that, but anyways, we'll go ahead with the next two there, and I guess, I don't know if they're, the next two for social services housing, and it adds up to a person, basically, if those next two are, and we've just dealt with a report at the Health and Social Services, again with social housing for the homeless, and it was about 7 people. I guess I'm questioning whether or not those can be eliminated for the time being while we wait for that report to come back in.
So through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, Ms. Van Dyke spoke to those both yesterday, and I just want to clarify that the report coming forward on February the 6th that was spoken to at advisory is regarding the Chippy homelessness program. These are separate, and they're from separate envelopes of funding from the Ministry of Housing. So they actually are not the same, they're different, and those additional FTEs from the homelessness program are separate from these two. The first one is really about the financial pieces to bring them all together and the accounting responsibilities to the ministry, and the second one is really about the affordable housing envelope within the housing portfolio.
So you're saying it says 2, but is that an increase to the 0.17 and 0.84? Is that an increase in a staff person basically, or no?
There's actually, I don't have the page in front of me, I'm just speaking ad hoc. There's actually no net levy impact for either of these positions.
But they're new positions.
They are new positions.
Well, I'll make a motion, we don't want them. We don't want to hire any more people, plain and simple.
Your motion is to remove these 0.17 and 0.84?
That's correct.
Is there a seconder? Page 3, it's on the right-hand side column. You see a .17 and .84 FTE for the finance clerk of the social services and housing and the affordable housing resource coordinator. Okay?
So that's another full-time person, basically.
Well, we have a motion. I'll need a seconder to put it on the floor. Councillor Height, discussion? Mr. Columbus?
Question to Marlene. What is the ramification, the impact by not proceeding with hiring these people?
So through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, unfortunately, I'll try to give it justice, but Ms. Van Dyke would be the more appropriate person. From the first one of the financial clerk, it's really about not fulfilling ministerial mandates that we need to complete to move forward and ensure that we're meeting all of our accountability requirements. The second one is the affordable housing. If you recall, Ms. Van Dyke yesterday speaking regarding the social service, the social housing and the 826 units that the original position was supporting, and we've had significant increases in mandates over the last 5 years, and we are just beyond capacity. So that position is to continue to provide the services and the ongoing additional services from the affordable housing side of the portfolio. And it is, again, fully funded, and we are maximizing the administrative funding that's available for that position. We will we will be challenged to be able to provide all of the housing mandates in addition to all of the supportive housing all of the supportive housing mandates that that position originally was intended for. So it is a secondary new position.
So, if I may, the report that we will have, that we're working on now, Heidi's working on right now, you say has no relationship to these people?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, that is correct. They are two separate envelopes. One is for social housing and affordable housing. The other envelope is strictly for the homelessness or the CHIPPY program as we know it.
Thank you.
Councillor Wells?
Listening to the explanation when we say that the program is fully funded, so if we cut this, there would be no reduction. Am I correct in that?
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Height?
I thought this, I'm reading here the finance, social services, and housing. If it's mandated, how come it doesn't say mandated? On page 28, when it speaks of it, it says this is an existing program. And then if it's mandated and meant to be full-time, it's only temporary position.
So through the mayor to Councillor Height, we want to ensure that we're meeting the full scope and want to make sure that one FTE is appropriate. We'll analyze over the course of the year, and if not appropriate, then we'll adjust accordingly. So we wanted the year to have the opportunity to ensure that it's the right fit for the position.
Okay. So, but you're still good with temporary full-time?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, that is correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? That is defeated. Continue, Councillor Brunton.
All right, I'm on page 4 now.
Yes.
And the one I got a question mark beside it is the hydrant flow identification discs. I'm not sure, is this coming from the fire department or whatever? Is that something we could live without?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brunton, it is code. This budget item, we've worked with public works staff who will supply the labor to put them on as a flush hydrant, so we've saved the cost of installation. The purchase of the discs, we were trying to get $30,000 to do the entire county in 1 year. We have cut that already in half to space it over 2 years.
Okay, guess we'll leave that one. The training officer, fire training officer, another new employee. It doesn't show any cost for it, but I assume that means a new employee. Am I correct on that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Breton. This individual presently works with Norfolk County, and he's been, it is a he, full-time in this position. However, last year it was put in as I believe, a temporary until we got to this year to make it permanent. So they are on staff, and the reduction of that, as far as I read this, is there is no impact on reduction of any funds if this position's cut.
Okay. And the next one I had here is the Public Works summer student. Did we not agree to hire all the summer students just last week? Is that an additional one to what we just dealt with?
Through the mayor to council, this is not a student that we have. You recall earlier today I spoke to this one. This is the one where we got rid of 2 full-time people and we have just a little bit too much work, and the student would make up for that. And this is what is allowing us to reduce the other 2 FTEs in that group.
Okay, so it's not within the 150 last week?
No, it is not. It's a brand new student position that we're recommending for this group.
Okay. And my last one, Mayor Luke, is the study for the designated downtown Port Dover traffic and parking study. And
Yes.
I cannot support $95,000 for that. I'd rather see somebody come forward with a fixed piece of land to put parking on, if that's what we need down there, and I'm prepared to recommend that that be removed at this time until somebody comes forward with a better idea. Thank you.
So you're making that a motion to remove that $95,000 parking study item?
Yes.
Seconder for that? Sonnenberg has seconded. Oh, sure, it's on the floor.
Thank you. I had this one red flagged as well. $95,000 to study traffic in Port Dover? Port Dover is not that big. We're hiring a highly skilled, highly paid individual to work for a whole year to study the traffic in Port Dover. I think I could study the traffic in the GTA for that amount of money. So I'm certainly going to support the Councillor Brunton's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Black?
Mayor Luke, through you to Lee, could this be done for something less than 95?
Through the chairman to council, staff, when staff are asked to price something out, we try to bring you the whole picture and the whole cost of what it's going to be. We don't try to piecemeal it and bring you 20,000 this year, another 15,000 to do the next part, and another 5,000 to do that, because we've learned that that doesn't make council very happy. So when we bring this forward, council made it very clear when we were looking at that they wanted, to potentially purchase property. So we have to have all of that sort of information in here. These are all the costs associated with everything. Rather than starting an office saying, we're going to hire somebody for 20,000, oh, and they need this, and that's going to be another 10,000, and oh, it's going to be, so the idea was that this was all encompassing to get us to the point where we could have plans to be able to address how to fix some of the traffic problems, as well as recommended solutions and offers and all of that sort of stuff with respect to acquiring additional land for parking. This was meant to be the full cost, as opposed to doing 20,000 now and a little bit later more and a little bit more after that, and all of those types of things. If we're looking at purchasing any property, we're going to have to do assessments of the property in terms of environmental types of things, so that we don't end up owning a piece of property that's contaminated. Those have costs associated with that. We included that in here as well, so that council could see the full ramification of it, as opposed to just piecemealing it together over time.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I know I live in Port Dover, and people are going to say that this is your own backyard, and that's why you're supporting it. But my Port Dover, the community of Port Dover, as far as our economic part, we need more parking. And I started asking about the possibility of buying a parking lot so we could get more parking. What staff has suggested is, John, there's this more than parking, this is more than a parking issue in Port Dover. We need to look at the whole enchilada. And while I understand $95,000, I was quite taken back by the cost as well. However, we do need to solve the parking situation in the community of Port Dover, downtown. My thought was, why don't we just buy a parking lot? But it was explained to me, you've got to justify that need. And I think this is what this is going to do.
Councillor Brunton?
Well, I'm driving Dover in the summer every week, and I agree with Councillor Wells. Parking at times is a real issue. If you recall, we almost bought a parking lot on Kent Street here a while ago. All we did is do some due diligence and come to realize we weren't going to buy it. And I would hope that someplace along the line here that the, Board of Trade would come to us and say, hey, we got a spot, we want to increase parking, and then we could talk about it, go from there. I personally am not concerned about all the traffic. You could shoot a cannon off in Dover today, I'm sure, so on Main Street, and it wouldn't be a problem. Parking is a problem in the summer. I don't disagree with that. So I'm saying I'll make a motion to remove it for now, and when we get some information on some possible parking, we'll deal with it. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I remember when they came in asking us to address the issue. This probably should have been done before we spent all those millions on the actual road. One of the problems was what we did on the side streets. You know, that's created, we've lost parking spots. I've been down there, I go to Dover quite often. I see the loss of parking spots, the bump outs, and the one option I liked was to turn that one street that goes eastbound into a one-way, and you had angle parking on both sides of the street.
Market Street.
Yeah, that gives you 40 spots, easy, right there. Saves us $95,000. I'm in.
Councillor Columbus?
Yes, to Ms. Robinson, does this include the situation, the traffic signal situation at Nelson and Main that there's been some concern about?
Yes, it does.
It does? Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? 2, 3, 4. The motion is carried. Any other discussion? Councillor Height?
Mayor Luke, I'm having ash problems right now. All right, on the top of page 4, we have an ash tree thing, 60 grand. Now, I know, I'll be quick, we lost the contract with Haldeman that was paying us $27,000 per year for our tree thing, and I don't see where that ever got fixed out, because that could have been used to plant the trees, but I just feel we're not looking at this as an entire solution. It's similar to what I just heard from Ms. Robinson, how we need to address the entire problem. This is not addressing the entire problem. This is a stopgap measure. I'm not very happy with it. I think there's also some forestry income. What was it, 80 grand? Why aren't we using the forestry income to plant the trees? We have the bushes. Are we burning it in operations?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, I may look at Nikki or finance for this, because I'm not 100% sure how the 60 or 70,000 from the through the mayor. Nikki's saying that the revenue is thrown into the forestry division budget and is reducing costs already.
So you're burning it in operations. And that's a bit of the problem I have, considering you just lost 27,000 from Haldeman, right? You got 80K coming in from your forestry sales. It's not really, there's not a very good business place or business case surrounding forestry right now. I know they do work at the CA, but this, I feel, is a stopgap measure. I'm going to defer it for 1 year, and I hopefully forestry can get things sorted out there, because something's not working properly. They need to look longer term. I know they're talking about forest management plans. That's where the planting comes in, not throw 60 grand randomly around places. Well, there's a whole bunch of other numbers moved around. I want to see a solid plan. And I'm going to move the motion. We defer this 1 year, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made that we take the $60,000 item out till next year. I need a seconder. Brunton has seconded. Discussion. I'm watching the clock, and we will either have to stop at 4 or we will have to get a motion to extend beyond. Discussion. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've tried to kind of remain silent on a few of these as we've been going through them for the second time, but I do have to speak on this one. I don't agree with the motion. Let's not forget, this is a replacement program. We cut all these urban ash trees out. I commend staff actually for recommending, although it's expensive, we know it is, but you don't get a 3 or 4 inch caliper sized tree planted in an urban setting for $100. You just don't. So I think this is a good start. I think it is going in the right direction of re-greening our urban environment. So I appreciate my colleagues' concern, and maybe there is a need for a bigger plan, but I do not want to see this stopped at this point. We've got to encourage replanting of these big trees in our urban downtowns where we've cut them out. Thanks.
Further discussion? Councillor Brunton?
Just a question for you to Bill. Are we done with the removal? I know we had a substantial amount of money for removal. Where's that at?
Through the mayor to Councillor Breton, we still have the year removal 218, 219, and 220, I believe. The inventories are being done, but there's still more cutting to go.
So, if with deferral of this for 1 year, would that be an issue?
Through the mayor to Councillor Breton, I mean, what I see is, as we cut and the inventory comes together, we already know we have 1,065 trees that are stumped that need replacing. Staff's present plan only plants approximately half of those, so we're doing the bare minimum now. To defer, it's not going to make any of these replantings go away, but by any means. We're still going to deferral. We'll still keep this in the budget. Staff are just hoping that some of these trees that have been cut since 2013, a lot of them are in parks in front of people's places that, you know, when an ash tree comes down, changes the aesthetics of their yards, and they're asking, you know, I take it the county took my tree down because we had to for safety reasons. Will they be putting a tree back? Our answer to now is yes, we hope to have some planning money to replant these trees.
Thank you.
Last, is there any more discussion? Otherwise, I'll call the question on this item. Motion is to defer this 1 year and remove the $60,000 from the budget. Those in favor of the motion? 3. Those opposed? That motion is defeated, so that will stay in. Is there anything else to come before this budget? While you're thinking, I will go to Mr. Johnson. I have 2 motions before me. The one, I can use the figure, unless there's any more discussion, that the figure become $84,261,800. Getting some thumbs up there. I appreciate you being right on top of this for us. Any other discussion come before the budget session? Well, we're maybe going to make it here. I would, I'll read the motion, then I'll look for a mover seconder. First of all, that this report, FS 1801, be received as information. The levy-supported operating budget is what the report is about, and that the 2018 levy-supported operating budget with a net levy requirement of $84,261,800 be approved. And further, that any surplus or deficit generated from general operations be contributed to or offset from the contingency reserve. And further, that council approves staff attendance at out-of-province staff development and training as outlined in section 5, pages 5-3 and 5-4 of the proposed 2018 levy-supported operating budget document. That'll have to change. The bottom, I believe. I think there was just the one. I'll just remove that because the one is already approved in the water, wastewater, and the other 3 were eliminated. That's fine. My apologies. I should have read this before my apologies. Wells has moved. I need a seconder. Councillor Columbus. $84,261,800. You okay with that? My apologies. I just tried to save a little coin here for the ratepayers. Nobody fell out of their seat. My apologies. 84 million. Gee. You guys tire me out. Do you know that? Discussion. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Need a mover and seconder for confirming bylaw. Black and Geisens. They have moved and seconded bylaw 2018-07. This is being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of Norfolk County. This 2018 council budget meeting be passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. Discussion. Those in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your efforts the last 2 days. No, you can come if you like. We'll find a job for you.